You betcha.
Yeah, we just recorded it and then did the YouTube because I didn't know how to do the go live Facebook thing. So
yeah, it's hard. Pat figured it out. She is basically our resident expert at figuring these things out. When they changed it, it became infinitely harder, and so we could not easily do this. This is not an easy situation.
Yeah, so I'm glad it's figured out because that's probably a better way to go.
Yeah, it did not it used to be super easy. Even I could do it. But then it did not become easy. It became hard. And then I could not do it. Even when we tried to do our live on Tuesday, I was trying to figure it out. And we figured out how to get live on YouTube. It's easy to go to YouTube, but for some reason, it's not easy to go to the page anymore. So, and then once we go live to our page, I like to use the 30-second
countdown.
Yeah.
You like my shirt? I love
it. Oh my gosh. I love that shirt. I wore a Wham shirt today. I was pretty excited about it. I do laundry, so I'm wearing Wham. So I remember it for this weekend. I can remember. I got actually I'm getting off work early tomorrow. I'm pretty excited about it. So they made a
nice get up there. Yeah.
I know they accidentally scheduled me for an operations in the afternoon, and so they didn't schedule any clinic patients, and there wasn't any cases because I don't operate on Friday afternoons, and so I was blessed with the opportunity to take the afternoon off, and so I get to go up early.
Awesome.
I know, I'm pretty excited. The fishing today was good. The fish were not super mobile. They stayed in a couple of spots, and so the boys had a good fishing day. So that was promising. I am pleased. Our spots that we're going to fish on the weekend on Sunday are still in spots. So Saturday's busy though. Where we're going to fish for Fishing 101 is busy.
Yeah.
That's okay though.
Yeah, I'm excited to go give it a try.
You are going to love Osagas, and you are going to love the town. I'm so sad I can't be up there. I really wanted to fish with you.
Yeah, it'll be fun. We'll go again.
Yeah, you got to.
It's going to be like an annual thing.
Ooh, excellent. I thought MEA was in October.
Well, then when I said MEA, then I was talking to my husband. I'm like, "What is this?" And I'm like, "No, it's not MEA, but I don't know what it is."
Is it like Columbus Day or something? It's some. I think it's a federal holiday.
MLK Day, maybe, or
yeah, it's a holiday.
Mm-hmm. But why Thursday, Friday?
Oh, I don't know. Here we go. Oh, that's a good point. I don't know. Welcome, ladies. We're live for Ice Fishing 101. I am Liz Colsen. I am the Vice President of Women Anglers of Minnesota, and I am here with our Education Co-Director, Melissa. Welcome. Hello. Melissa, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, Melissa Wagner, live down in Southeast Minnesota, a Co-Education Director, and happy to be here with Liz.
And you are new this year. Do you have anything exciting to say about yourself, because you're kind of interesting? So
yeah, I work for the DNR fisheries, so I kind of work and play in the fisheries world, but joined WAM a couple of years ago, and just really excited to have new friends in WAM that also enjoy fishing as much as I do. Didn't really have a lot of women friends that liked fishing, and just wanted to meet some more people. So I've met so many people and jumped into this role as one of the education directors, and just kind of excited to help share some of my knowledge of fisheries from kind of my work world, but also learn more about how to fish with all the other ladies.
Excellent. We're so excited to have you and have all of your knowledge about kind of I consider them the other fish, because I know nothing about like trout or any of those other fish, and you were just like an expert and you know everything about them. So I'm super excited to have you, and we are delighted to have all of your knowledge, and I'm so excited that you're here with us tonight. So we are going to talk about ice fishing this evening. We're specifically focusing on more of the basics of ice fishing. I go over kind of a variety of topics. If you guys have questions, put them in the live stream comments on Facebook, and we'll try to get to them. If I don't address them specifically in the live stream, you can always send me an email. You can send an email to either the VP email, or you can send them to the education email. We will definitely try to get to them, and I will look at them afterwards also. I do have a presentation, so we will add it to the stage and we will get to it. So I do go over kind of a lot on this talk. It's really kind of wide in its breadth. I don't go a lot of depth because I want you guys to learn a little bit about a lot of stuff so that you can really get a good basic fundamental knowledge of what it is to ice fish, what you really need to get out there, and really how to be safe on the ice. And I do spend a lot of time on ice safety, what kind of equipment and gear you need, some basics on jig selection and how to kind of use them, difference between plastics and live bait and how to use them. I do go over some electronics, mostly on the flasher, because I think that's what most people use most of the time when they go out fishing. Basics on rod selection, why you would choose one over the other. Some of the differences between the different lines, monofilament versus braid, a little bit about tip-ups. I don't use them a bunch, but I just talk about them a little bit. If you see those 3 stars, that's because I use that product, and I'm just highlighting that that's what I use. I do have the caveat that if you see those 3 things and I use it, I am on the clam promotional staff, so I do talk about the clam products a lot because I do use them a lot. So take that with a grain of salt. I do favor their products a little bit. So that is my disclaimer. First, let's talk about ice safety. This is really, really important. Obviously, you must have ice safety gear. The gear that you really must have when you're on the ice to be safe is a spud bar, emergency throw rope, picks, spikes, a fishing buddy, and it's nice to have a float suit. Not 100% necessary to have a float suit, but really at this point, most of the ice gear that you're going to have is really going to include that float suit, so that if you do go through the ice, you really are going to be able to stay afloat. I'm going to go a little bit more through each of kind of these safety gears on some of the next slides. Some basics for ice safety. Always check yourself. Trust no one. Just because somebody else is driving out on the ice does not mean that it's safe. Not everybody has your best interest at heart. And some people are a lot more cavalier than others. And you always see nobody goes out on the ice that day thinking that they're going to go through. So always check for yourself. That is the number one safety rule, and always keep that in mind. The chart that you're seeing on here from the DNR is for clear, black, good ice. So make sure that you keep that in mind. If it's snow covered, if it's cloudy ice, or if it's, not really quite good hard ice, you might need to double that thickness. Snow is insulating, so the ice doesn't get quite as hard and get as firm. Firm, thick, clear ice is actually much thicker and is much better quality ice. White ice that you can't see through is thinner, less quality. If it's honeycombed, it's not as good ice, and it doesn't hold up as well to when you're standing on it. So you're going to need more ice in those conditions. And always remember that just because it's 12 inches in one area, it does not mean it's going to be 12 inches in another area. So you always want to be really cognizant of when you're driving or when you're on the ice of your conditions and what things look like. Always stay on well-traveled areas and always check that ice yourself. If you venture off those well-traveled areas, that's when you want to be extra careful and really stay alert. Check that ice and always have a buddy with you, particularly when you're on that new ice, because that's that system that's going to always keep you safe. And this is when I'm going to talk about how to check that ice with a spud bar. The thing about a spud bar is that spud bars come in all sizes and shapes. but you need to know the spud bar that you have. We have a 10-pound spud bar, and for me, it's different than it is for when my husband uses it. I'm 5'2", kind of short. I don't create as much momentum with that 10-foot spud bar as his 6', 3 frame. He can throw that thing down, and in one throw, he can go through 2.5 inches of ice. I cannot do that. I can barely go through it with two. So I have to hit it twice in order to know that I'm safe. He goes through once. So he will walk and he goes, dung, dung. But I have to go, dung, 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 and hit it twice in the same spot to know that it's safe. So the most important thing for you to do is to get a spud bar that you're familiar with and to learn in ice that you know the depth, and learn how hard you have to hit and how hard you have to go in order for it to go through that 2 inches of ice, which is generally a safe distance. So there was a question that came through. If you're driving an ATV, how often should I check the ice? So for me, if I'm on my ATV, I'm driving on at least what I feel to be 6 to 7 inches of ice, potentially even more. And I'm a super big chicken, so in early ice, I will stop every 5 to 6 feet and check the ice. So if this is a definite personal preference sort of situation, and it definitely depends on how familiar you are with a lake. So I will stop and check very frequently, particularly that first time that you're out, and I stop the ATV. Where I know that the ice is safe, I then walk out in front of the ATV. I will take my spud bar, and then I will take my auger, and then I will check with my spud bar, drill the hole. If it looks like the ice is safe, then I continue drilling. Once I have my ATV on the ice, in general, it's thick enough that I'm not so concerned that I'm going to be having my spud bar, but I typically do have my spud bar out. So if you're going back to the spud bar, because I do really kind of want to focus on that for early ice, if your spud bar goes through, that just means you shouldn't be walking. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're not going to be safe, but it's important to back up the same way that you came. Don't panic. Just back up and walk back the same way that you came. And to follow that same train, the trail that you came back on. Sometimes it's just a soft spot. Sometimes it's the ice is thin in that whole area. Usually you're on early ice, and that means that, you were kind of prepared for the fact that that ice was going to be a little bit thin. So just remember, returning to shore, go back on that same path that you were on before. So the safety things that you should watch out for on the ice, and there's a question that came in, and I will answer it here in a second. Things you should watch out for. This is really important when you're in a vehicle, when you're walking, and when you're on an ATV. Don't drive under a bridge. That's where you have running water and current, and that's where the ice is going to be thin. That's where the ice is thin on any lake. Anytime there's current, anytime that there's a break, narrow parts of the lake, anywhere where you have water coming into a lake, where you have reeds. So anywhere on a lake where there's reeds or emergent vegetation, the ice is going to be thin. Do not drive over that. That is dangerous. Do not drive under the bridges. That is dangerous. Also look for springs or water spots on the water that aren't from holes. And that picture on the bottom left is of a spring. It's kind of, you can see those cracks. Those can be from methane gas or from natural springs or hot waters. We do have quite a bit of those in Minnesota. In fact, down where I live in the Hutchinson, Waconia area, Lake Waconia has quite a few natural springs, and they're marked pretty regularly. Another big one that you're going to see pretty often is ice heaves. And that's where two sheets of ice push up against each other. And what happens is those ice sheets push up over, and it's open water and a crack. And it's not frozen. They're just laying on top of each other. And until they freeze together, that's free. So that picture that's on that top right, that was taken last weekend on Mille Lacs. That's a truck that actually went through. Just 200 feet down the road, there's a bridge that was over that ice bridge that people could drive over, because the ice on each side is very thick, but in the middle it's open water. So don't drive over ice ridges. And the question came through, is it safe to trust the guides and plowed roads on the bigger lakes? In general, if you are on a plowed road from a guide or from a resort, the reason that you paid the fee to go out on that road is because they've checked the road and they've made sure that it's safe. Nothing is ever 100% safe on any road. So you always have to be aware and always be ice safe and ice aware. So keep your eyes peeled. If you see a crack or if you see water in the middle of the road, you need to make sure that you're keeping your eyes out. But in general, those are going to be the safe areas. If you veer off of the road or go off of that beaten path, that's when you need to be more aware. So what happens if you do go through the ice? Because that's it can happen. First thing, easier said than done, stay calm. The cold water takes your breath away. It takes 90 seconds or more just to get rid of the cold reaction that you're going to have. You immediately lose all of the air in your lungs. Your heart starts racing. You panic. And once you can calm yourself so that you can get the panic out of your, get it out of your system, get your ice picks, which everyone should have their ice picks around. You can't climb out of the ice because it's slippery. That's why you need something sharp to sort of pick your way out. You get your ice picks in your hands. You get yourself to the edge of the ice. You grab the edge of the ice and then you kick your feet so that you can be flat and so that you can then kind of kick yourself and just kick while you're picking as much as you can, trying to pull yourself while you kick. And really you're just dragging yourself up while you're kicking to get yourself out and using your body as flat as you can, so that you're spreading your body weight out on the ice. And even if the ice is breaking as you're trying to come up, just keep doing it. Just keep doing it and keep doing it until the ice stops breaking underneath you, because eventually you'll get to ice that you were walking on, that is safe. Or you'll get onto enough ice that's floating that you'll be able to get more momentum and you'll be able to pick your way out. And you just keep doing that until you're up on the ice. And then once you're on the ice, you can roll, because your body weight is, the more that you spread yourself out, the less you're going to crack on the ice. If you stand up and your feet are down, that is too much body weight and too little of a surface area. And that's what's going to crack the ice. You really want to spread your surface area out until you're back onto good ice. So that rolling area is that rolling kind of aware. And then Pat made a comment, practice falling. As practice this in your head. So the key to the safety and the key to going through this is go through these steps over and over and over in your head, so that if it happens, you don't have to think about it, that it's just, okay, get my picks, calm down, go through it, grab, kick, get out of the water. So that if it does happen, it becomes more of a routine. And I did jump into very, very cold water in the fall in my bibs, just to see what it was like. And it takes your breath away. So, but it was very good to sort of learn how I would respond in case it happens, because I have a fear of falling through the ice. So what if someone else goes through? This is huge. This is why you have that throw rope. You got to stay calm. Do not go running for them. Call 911. Your phone is your best friend. Call for help. That's the first thing you need to do, is you need to stay calm and call for help, because you can do nothing if you go into the ice with them. So get your rope, get your phone, call 911, scream for the other people on the ice, look and see if there's anyone around you. If you see houses, scream for help, call that 911, get your rope. The thing about ice is that when you throw that rope to that other person, unless you have something to tie down to, you're going to slide too when they grab it. So you're going to either need to have picks or something to hold on to pull them up, because they will pull you in. So really be cognizant of that. And this I've practiced, because when you pull on somebody who's on slippery ice, because the ice is very, very slippery right now, there's no traction. So make sure you either have cleats or you stick yourself in something. If you don't have something to stick into, you could drill a hole and use that hole as a momentum, or use that hole as something to grab onto, but you need some traction to be able to pull on that rope. If you miss with the rope, you just pull it in and throw it out. The clam rope is actually really nice, because you throw it and that the fabric part actually becomes a really nice thing to hold on to. And then you go through the same steps as the other person has to kick up their feet, but now they have a rope to be able to hang on to and kick themselves out. The key too is get this person as quickly as you can to getting them warm and dry, because they quickly become ineffective at doing pretty much anything because you can get hypothermic really fast. So if you go through, that's kind of what you got to do. Little keys to driving on the ice. Obviously, no ice is safe, no matter how thick it is. I wait until it's 12 to 14 inches before driving on it. 14 usually with my truck. I usually stay on well-traveled roads. Driving slow is very important. When you drive fast on the ice, you're more likely to break the ice. You're more likely to damage the road. So drive slow, roll your windows down so you can get out if something happens. Take your seatbelt off. The most important thing that you do when you are on the ice and you're in a big group, do not park like it is a parking lot, because it is not a parking lot. The ice is not cement. Don't park next to each other. Park far away, space yourself out. The ice can't take the load of many, many cars sitting beside each other. So space yourself out. I say 15 feet. Sometimes it needs to be more. Don't drive on a lake in the dark if you've not been on the lake. And then use your electronics. Use your phone. If you have avionics, use a trail. So use that trail for where you came in, and then use that trail to go out, because you know that it's safe. If you're going to plan on leaving the road, make sure that you've been on that area and you feel safe doing so. Pat made a comment, turn off the radio and listen to the ice. Yep, it's a great idea to listen. When you drive, the ice is going to make cracking noises. That's totally normal. But you'll know if the cracking noises don't sound right. There's normal cracking noises and there's not so normal cracking noises. And there is a distinct difference if you feel your truck give, that is not a normal noise. And one thing that, people say, if you feel your vehicle give, you can quickly open your door and it can potentially, save your vehicle from going under. But I've not seen that or had that happen, but you could potentially have that. So checklist of things that you need to be safe: spud bar, ice picks, throw rope, float suit, cleats, check the ice thickness yourself, headlight, avionics on your phone, and then warm gear. Those are kind of the things that I recommend. So other gear that is must-haves versus nice-to-haves. Really, you need rods and reels, jigs and bobbers, baits, plastics, augers, batteries, gas, propane, warm weather, waterproof clothing, gloves and mittens, a bucket. I think a cell phone is an absolute must with GPS, and then water, because we must drink water. The things that are kind of nice to have, having a shelter is nice, a heater, a flasher. I fish outside most of the time, so I don't always have a shelter. Flashers are nice, float suit, sled, hand warmers. We all like snacks, so that might be a must-have. Quickly to go over shelters. The difference between kind of the two main shelters, you have flipovers and you have pop-ups. They both have their pros and cons, and they're both very useful. And it really depends on what you're looking for and how you fish. I am a run and gun sort of fisherwoman, so I prefer to fish out in the open. I very rarely will have a shelter. But I do like both styles for different types of fishing. Flipover style is very sturdy. It has a sled, so it comes on the sled. You can pile all of your stuff inside of it. They can be small. They can be a little bit bigger. They're a little bit heavier. Because they come on a sled, they're a fixed size. So sometimes they don't fit into smaller vehicles quite as nicely. And they can be a little bit heavier. They can also be a little bit more expensive than the hub styles. But they pop up very quickly and they fold over very nicely. The one-mans are particularly nice to tote behind your snowmobile or your sled and, pop up in 2 seconds and be fishing very, very quickly. The hub styles are also very, very nice because they pop up very quickly and easily. They're very light. They fit into cars very nicely. They're very affordable as far as, affordability options. For a woman, they are much more lightweight in general than the flipover style. Cost effectiveness in general, less expensive than the flipovers. You can get much larger ones than you can and fit more people in them. So if you're thinking about camping on the ice, that pop-up is going to be more what you're looking for. So, they both have their indications for depending on what kind of fishing you're going to do. They take a little bit longer to set up, and they need to be hooked into the ice so that they don't blow away and become a giant windsock. Different kind of heaters. There's, two basic ones. The more open style, sunflower style, which are a little bit less expensive, but a little bit more risky. And then the more enclosed style, like the buddy heaters. The key to heaters is just making sure you have enough ventilation so that you don't get carbon monoxide poisoning, which is not insignificant. So make sure you have a window opener, make sure you have something cracked so that you're getting ventilation through your shack. Next, quick differences between a Vexilar, a flasher, like sonar, and forward-facing sonar. So you're going to hear these words used a lot in fishing and a lot in ice fishing. So this is kind of the difference between the three. The Vexilar flasher, that's the one on the far left. The middle is the sonars. Those are the hummingbirds. That's what you see like on a boat. And they're also can be used as a flasher style in the winter. And then the forward-facing sonar, which is live imaging, which uses both the sonar technology and forward-facing live sonar. The Garmin makes it, Humminbird makes one, and Lowrance make one. I have both the Vexilar and the Live Scope. And I'll go over those a little bit more in a bit. Augers, lots of different auger options, and honestly, they're all great. It just depends on kind of how you like to fish and what you can afford and kind of how heavy you want to go. A hand auger is lightweight, inexpensive, but it's labor intensive. You got to crank it. But in thin ice, a hand auger is a great option. So not bad to have, not bad to have in a pinch. And a sharp blade, a hand auger can go through the ice pretty quick. Propane and gas augers, they're a little bit heavier, a little bit more clunky. The gas are a little bit lighter than the propane, but they're cost effective. They can drill a lot of holes through a lot of ice. So great for starters, but a little bit heavier for maybe women to tote around. I think the electric augers are probably what most people have. I have drill augers. For all of my augers, all of mine are on Milwaukee drills. I have different bits. On mine, I've got a light flight, pistol bit, and then I have a clam metal hand auger action on one of them. I have had a Strike Master and I have had an eye on both. All are good. They all have different pros and cons, but the electric augers tend to be a little bit more expensive, but they are lightweight and battery powered. So I like them all. And you'll be able to try them out at Ice Fishing 101. We have a bunch of different electric augers that you can try out. A little bit on ice suits. There's a lot of different suits out there on the market. I obviously recommend a float suit because, float suits are made to keep you afloat if you were to fall through. They're much more flexible than they used to be. They are pretty comfortable. Depending on the company that you get, they're all pretty comparable, I think, now as far as the float suits go. Clam has a lot of really nice ones. And obviously, I'm a little bit biased. The Delta suit is probably the most flexible, but they've even put the new motion float technology into the Rise suits this year, and they're really quite flexible. So I don't think you're going to run into a lot of stiffness like you used to see in the float suits. So I think no matter what you get, if you feel comfortable in the suit, that's really the most important part. The thing about a suit is you want to wear it. So find a suit that's comfortable, that fits you well, that you'll actually wear on the ice. Because I find that people get ice suits and they buy it because of a name brand or they buy it because of the color, but it just doesn't fit right and it just doesn't feel right, and then they don't wear it. So find that suit that fits you and find the suit that has the things that you like. Because even if it's orange, if it fits you well, it keeps you warm, it keeps you dry, and it feels good on your body, you're going to wear it. And feeling comfortable in it, that is seriously the most important part. I specifically have the shorty bibs, which they don't, Clam doesn't make anymore. They have a Rise short and I'm short. And so the knees hit me in the right spot and they are size 2X and they are giant. I literally am like floating in them. But when I go down on my knees, I don't have to pull them up. Every time I go down on my knees, I don't have to pull my bibs up. And it saves me like 3 steps every time I go ice fishing. And it's wonderful. I love them. So little things like that make a big difference when you're out there on the ice. Some special considerations for us ladies is the drop seat that DSG has. The upside is that you don't need to remove the bibs to go to the restroom. The downside of those is that the back is low. You can kind of see the back doesn't go all the way up, just the front hooks around you. So there can be kind of drafty a little bit in the back. That bothers some people. I don't usually wear a coat, so I wasn't a huge fan of that drop seat. Also, they come up really high on your chest. So if you have no torso like me, the DSG bibs don't necessarily fit the no torso people. The question was, what was the shorty bibs? They were the short and stout rise bibs that Clam used to make. They no longer make them. Last year was the last year they made them. So sad face. Maybe they'll bring them back eventually. For plus size ladies, 2 options. The Clam men's bibs go up to a size 5XL, and then DSG has up to 4XL. I will say that the Delta bibs in the Clam line are the most roomy as far as like hips and kind of chest go. I know that the DSG plus size bibs are amazing for the plus sizes, and DSG does a really, really good job with their plus size clothes. So props to them because really they do a great job. So all of the DSG plus size clothing, I've heard really good things. And I do, although I don't have a lot of DSG clothes, I did try on their DSG rain bibs and I really did like them. So they fit pretty nicely as compared to say like the Blackfish men's fit. So those are my spiel on bibs. I personally have, like I said, the Clam Rise bibs. I have the short and stout ones. I also wear the men's Rise. I do also have the women's Rise. I have lots of bibs. I also have the women's Rise Clam bibs. I wear them all. I have different sizes in all of them, and I wear them all at different times of the year, depending on kind of the conditions. I am pretty warm. I run pretty warm on the ice, so I don't wear a lot of clothes and a lot of layers. I think the Delta bibs are probably the warmest, but they aren't as waterproof as the Rise. So if it's really wet, I always make sure to wear the Rise. If it's super cold, I like the Delta bibs because they have that super fuzzy lining and it makes it feel like you're getting a hug. I always wear my Delta coat. That's the coat that I wear. And to be honest, I actually wear my Delta coat as my daily coat. So I have an ice fishing Delta coat that smells like fish. And then I have a daily Delta coat that I wear and my day-to-day winter coat. Because who doesn't wear their ice fishing coat to work? I used to wear the one that I wore ice fishing, but it didn't go over well with my colleagues because it smelled like ice fishing. So I left a puck of bait in my pocket, and that was the day that I stopped wearing my ice fishing coat to work. Everyone was like, "What's that smell?" It was Dr. Colsen. So boots. I personally think that boots are probably one of the most important thing that you can do to keep yourself warm on the ice other than your bibs. There's a lot of different bib options, but I really preach quite a bit about the Baffin is my favorite boot company. They're the warmest boots that I have found to wear. I do 2 different kinds of the Baffin boots that I really like. The Baffin Impact and the Baffin Titan. I added the Titan to my lineup last year when it was really wet. So the Titan is an all rubber boot and it's polar rated for -60 below. Their work boot. It is a unisex boot. About, I think, $160. We get a discount. The Impact is similar. Impact, I believe, has the buckle, and then there's another one that's like the Impact, I can't remember the name of it, that has a tie. Both of them are not cute by any means. They feel like you have a cloud on your foot because there's a bunch of cushion on the inside. And that cushion is what's important to keeping your foot warm. The reason that these boots are so good at keeping your toes warm is because they have such a good layer of insulation and they have so much air that's going around your foot. These boots last for a very long time because the outside lasts, and then you can buy new actually inside liners to replace them. So they are absolutely amazing. My Impacts are not the kind that can go in like slushy water. That's why I bought the Titans, because they're completely rubber and can go all the way in water. There was a question about non-waterproof water boots, and I don't think that it's a big issue if they're not completely waterproof, because as I said, my Impacts are not completely waterproof. They're only rubber up to a slight, up a little bit. But during the spring when it's melting, and not but I don't know, three weeks ago when there was like 3 inches of water on the ice, I wouldn't have worn my Impacts just because, 4 inches up there's fabric that is waterproof, but I just don't want to risk my feet getting wet, because once your feet get wet, you're done. So I don't think it's as big of an issue, but that's why I do have the all rubber Titans. They are much heavier though on your feet. The rubber is a little bit heavier than the Impact. The Impacts are really quite light. And for people who have larger calves, both of these have a really wide calf. Another really important foot warmth tip is a wicking sock. Wool is always wonderful because it dries and it holds air. That's why wool is so good, because the wool particles themselves, the actual fabric, holds air in it, and air is an insulator, and that's why it's wonderful. And even when wool is wet, it still maintains warmth. So again, another reason why it's warm, but also it dries quickly. If your feet sweat, an absolute fantastic tip is to get a boot warmer. I invested in boot and glove warmers, the best money I've ever spent. So every night you get home, you throw your boots and your gloves on these boot warmers. Pro tip, get some room spray and put it right beside them, because the boot warmers and the hand glove warmers just basically, like, the heat that comes through them sprays your entire room with the smell of the fish smell on your gloves. That was fun to learn. It's terrible, actually. It's your whole house smells like fish. So I just spray it with some Febreze, and fine. Nobody knows any different. But we did get the boot glove warmer, so that each of them have 4. And then you can also warm your boots up in the morning so they're warm before you put them on. Starting with warm boots can be a game changer for your day. The next thing, and this is physiology at work, and I am all about science. It's probably my favorite thing. I'm a super big nerd. You cannot have too tight of boots. If your boots are too tight, it will limit the circulation to your toes. The blood vessels that feed the warmth to your feet are in your ankles. And if your boots are too tight and you have too much at your ankle, you're not going to get blood circulation to your tootsies. And if you're not getting that circulation to your toes, they're just not going to be able to stay warm. So you actually want to make sure that your boots are big. So you want to make sure you have space and air between the boot and your toe. You don't want to be sloshing around in your boot, but you want to be able to have a little bit of space, not only for that air, but for blood flow to be able to circulate. So kind of both of those two things. And be very careful with the packet warmers in boots. If they break, the chemicals inside those packets will cause a chemical burn, and it will cause a 3rd-degree chemical burn, number 1. Number 2, be very careful about battery warmed boot warmers. Make sure you get the ones that have the plug that goes into the sock, and that the battery is outside of the boot. Like DSGs have the battery that's outside, and you control the warmth outside of the boot. The battery isn't inside the boot. The reason being, lithium batteries cannot get wet. That is very dangerous. You do not want lithium to be exposed to moisture. And if you have a lithium battery inside a moisture-filled boot, that is a recipe for disaster. So please do not do that. So boot selection, again, I recommend Baffin. There are a lot of different boot brands. That's just the one that I recommend. And we are blessed to get a 20% discount for them, which is a really, really good discount. The Titans are pretty reasonably priced. Ice fishing sleds, you need to invest in like a real ice fishing sled versus a little kid sled, just because it's deeper, the plastic is better, and it won't break. So it's easy to tote your stuff around in the good sled. The next thing, other than you're keeping your feet warm, is to keep your hands warm. And this is kind of another one of my areas of expertise. If you don't know, I'm a general surgeon. And so my hands are super important to me. And so gloves are critical. There's kind of 3 different options for gloves. You can do a glove, a glommet, which is a glove that kind of pulls down, and you can do mittens. I do gloves and mittens. I actually really started doing the waterproof glove this year, the Arid Blackfish, when I'm fishing, and I do like them. Obviously, you have mobility with your fingers, a little bit more to handle the jigs and the fish. Waterproof so that your hands aren't getting wet. Glommets are nice because you can kind of take them down. So some people do like those. I love mittens because I can keep hand warmers in them, and I just take them off to do stuff. And the next slide will show you why I like to wear mittens because I use other techniques to keep my hand warm. Melissa, what do you like to wear on the ice? Oh, she's muted.
Sorry, I gotta flip back and forth. I like either gloves or mittens, but I tend to like take them off all the time. So I was just about to type in the chat that this year I had to buy my kindergarten kid those like clips that go to your jacket and your gloves because he kept losing them, and the teacher suggested those, like the old school string through your coat. So I bought myself a pair because I'm going to use them. I just like take my gloves off and I either drop them in a puddle of water or in the hole and they get wet. So I don't know. I got to like use my dexterity fingers. So I'm constantly like taking mine on and off. So I'm excited to give those a try.
I love that idea because I do the same thing with my mittens. I drop them in the water puddle. So that's actually the problem that I have when I take them off. I like the idea of using the clip so that they don't fall on the ground.
Yep. Amazon, $5.
Love it. Which this is my next purchase is actually Amazon purchasing. So keeping your hands warm. This is again, nerd Liz, physiology. This is by far my best secret trick for keeping your hands warm. I do this every time I go out, and I've actually discovered a new and improved way of doing it this year. And I'm super excited about it. Because it prevents me from actually burning my wrist, because sometimes these hand warmers are a little hot. I bought these wrist guards. So that's this top picture. It's a wrist brace. It's just a elastic wrist brace, and it goes all the way down to here on your wrist. So first of all, for you ladies, you have 2 arteries that run to your wrist, your radial artery and your ulnar artery, and they run on the palm side of your hand that feeds all of your fingers. So it's this side. This is where the arteries run. So if you're going to want to warm your hand, so warm the blood that's going to your fingertips, you want something to sit here. The blood that's coming past right here is what you want to get warm. So this will get warm and it comes up to the tip. So you want this part to get warm. So there is Hot Hands makes, and that's that little black thing down there, a little holder that will hold the hand warmer right there, but it's bulky and I didn't love it. So I wasn't a huge fan of it. And then you can get the little Lululemon, or however you say it, zipper sweatband things, but also they're bulky. I wasn't a huge fan. So I was trying to find something that wouldn't slide up and down my wrist. And so these elastic wrist guards for like carpal tunnel go over your hand, and then they go down all the way here. And I'll put the wrist thing, and I'm going to do a video on this And I'll post it on our page. And I put the wrist guard here, and you can use a foot warmer, but the foot warmers get really hot. And you stick it, and then you fold the other side up. And it's such a thin, stretchy material that literally it's just right against your skin. And I do that on both wrists, and it's so thin that I can put my watch over it. So I absolutely love this. This will keep my fingers warm down to probably 15 degrees without gloves. And then I put my new Arid Blackfish gloves on. So this is again, this is my super secret, not really secret. I tell it to everybody all the time, like all of the everything. So best tip to use on the ice to keep your fingers warm using science. I recommend it. Be very careful though when you put, like I said, the toe warmers on your hands because they get very, very warm. So please use this tip. One thing about the waterproof gloves that I learned a really hard lesson this past weekend is even though they're not, your hands aren't getting wet, the glove is wet on the outside. If you get onto your four-wheeler and drive in the cold, the outside of the glove will get very, very cold. And if your hand is a little bit cold underneath, your hand will get cold very, very quickly, and you can get frostbite on your fingers very, very fast, like within less than 3 minutes. So I learned very, very hard. You must take waterproof gloves off if you are going to get on a four-wheeler and start driving. So what I do is I take my wet waterproof gloves off. Even though my hands aren't wet, the outside of it is wet. Take those off, and I have some really awkward giant battery, like AA battery operated heated gloves that I put on for four-wheel driving back to the launch. And I just turn them on, and I that's what I drive. But you got to be really careful because those wet waterproof gloves, you can get frostbite very quickly. And that was a almost dangerous lesson that I learned. So to bobber fishing, let's get to the fishing. This is how you set up a bobber. Super easy. This is the easy, cheap bobber. You just go to the store, buy these little plastic bobbers. They can easily be cut. You can set it for your second hole. The reason that bobber fishing is great is because this is if they're tight-lipped. You just put the minnow on it. There's a hook, a sinker weight, and then you cut that slip bobber to the length that you, sorry, I'm answering a text message that from work. You cut the bobber to the length that you need for the jig. So the bobber will hold up or be floating as much as the jig that you have on. So it can be tailored to whatever you have and however big your minnow is. So I love these Ice Buster bobbers. And if you're going to have a second line, I just think bobber fishing is always a great thing to have a second rod to be hooked up to. So don't ever feel bad bobber fishing. If nothing is working, throw a bobber rod down. Heck, if everything's working, throw down a bobber rod. Bobber rods work. Fish love minnows. So some differences in jigs. There's 3 basic metal types that you're going to see in jigs right now: lead, tungsten, and zinc. Zinc is the newest kid on the block, and that's because we're environmentally friendly, and WAM is very environmentally friendly, and we want to support these things. Lead, obviously, is the oldest. It's been around for the longest. Most common that you're going to see, slower fall rate. A lot of fish don't necessarily like that slow fall rate, but some do. Tungsten is heavy, very environmentally friendly. Most of the small jigs are going to be made of this tungsten. It's much, much heavier than that lead. It's smaller profile, so it's going to fall fast for a smaller jig. The majority of the jigs I use are made of tungsten, particularly the small ones. But then you're going to be seeing a lot more made of zinc alloy. It's actually lighter than lead, so it actually falls pretty slowly. But you're going to see it in a little bit the bigger jigs. So the spoons, this is what you're going to see, this Pinhead Pro, which literally is my most favorite jig or my favorite spoon. It's all I use. And again, it's newer on the market, but you're going to see it more often because, lead isn't good for the environment. So we really are trying to get away from lead and using it more often. So it's easy to mold. It's easy to use. It's easy to make into bright colors. It's easy to paint. People really, really like it. So you're going to be seeing a lot of things that are made of zinc. Different jig styles, just to familiarize yourself with sort of what they look like. A vertical jig is one that's going to hang like this. Horizontal jig hangs like this. Spoons look like spoons. Jigging minnow, this is going to be like a jig and wrap. This is a tikka minnow type presentation. Lipless crankbaits or rattle bait. These are more finding. Louder, they make noise. It's something that's a little bit more aggressive. These are the basic kinds of jigs that most people use ice fishing. And this goes from least aggressive on the left to most aggressive on the right. So what about sizing? So I feel like when they were creating sizes, the manufacturers were just trying to confuse us because you have both weights and numbers and millimeters. The thing is, just find one and just know that the bigger that it gets, the bigger that it is, and just kind of look at it. So, 1/16 happens to be a number 12, which happens to be a 5. Do you have to memorize these to be an excellent fisher person? No. You just have to look. You can always Google it. The key is, though, when you're buying jigs, it's nice to have a couple in each size because you will always lose your favorite jig. And that is the rule that the Northern will take your favorite jig the second that you put it on. Just 100%. And always match your jig to your rod. You don't want to have a really, really heavy jig on a noodle rod because you don't want your rod to be bent with the jig because you want to be able to see your tip go. Majority of the time I'm fishing with a 1/32 or a 4mm. I do occasionally fish with a 1/16 for, bigger, when I do bigger crappies. I rarely will use a 1/64 or a 3mm. Sometimes a 3mm though for sunfish. So again, I think they do jig sizes just to confuse us. It all just depends on the manufacturer. So in the list of least action to most action, when I say action, I mean how much is the jig moving, how much water is it displacing. So little motions to big motions and making lots and lots of noise. So horizontal jig and vertical jig, really they're about the same. Some could argue that one is maybe a little bit more, but when push comes to shove, they're probably the least aggressive of them. Then you're going to get to the spoons. You can jig a spoon that's like a pinhead a little bit, and then you can jig a pinhead a lot of it. So you can make it very aggressive, but you can make it also very subtle. A jigging minnow is a pretty aggressive bait. When you jig it, it can go to the left or the right. It can go up and down, depending on how much you move it. But you can also just jig it and have it move a little bit. So again, it's one that you can sort of play with. Now, a rattle bait, you can dart it around, but it's going to be making noise. So it has a constant noise that it's making, and you also can have the displacement of the water via the rattle and also displacement of the bait. You do have spoons that also have rattles. So there's a lot of different ways to attract fish into your bait, and it just depends on kind of what the fish is looking for, which is kind of what we're going to get to. What are my favorite jigs? These are the ones that you're going to see on my rod, and this is literally what I have on my rods right now. I love the tungsten caddis cane as my vertical. This is what I use when I cannot catch the panfish, in particularly the sunfish. And I like it in the pink with the 2 white dots, or the half pink and the half white with the black dot, the number 12 and the number 14. And then I have a clam drop kick 1/16 at all times. Sometimes I have the red, but I've kind of been, I have Wonder Bread on currently. I 100% of the time, no matter what, always have a pinhead. It's pretty much all I ever use. I currently have a Wonder Bread on. It's in general a 1/32. If I'm going for really big crappies, I will upsize to a bigger size, to the 1/16, and sometimes even bigger. Almost always it's going to be white or something white or pink on Osakis. I also use the clam tikka minnows, not infrequently. What are your favorite jigs, Melissa?
Yeah, I like the drop kick. I'm headed up to Osakas, not this weekend, but next weekend. So I'm going to try the pinheads as you suggested. But yeah, usually just kind of the jigs. And I'm a big fan of like pink and white for some reason. But you can never go wrong with chartreuse too. But
Chartreuse is a good color. There's something about chartreuse, and honestly, and I am going to go a little bit over colors and water. It does matter a little bit with the color of the water and the lighting, kind of what you might choose to pick and which lake you're on. So, what jigs and what presentation are you going to pick? I'm a little bit more of an aggressive fisher person. When you're searching for a fish, I usually start out more aggressive and then go a little bit less aggressive. Using a spoon out first, using jigging, using a rattle bait, kind of in search mode. It's creating a vibration, a flash, more of a reaction bite for the fish, and then going to more slower finesse presentation if that's not working. Again, I'm always putting that pinhead out in front of that fish, starting it a little bit more aggressive. If it aggressive doesn't work, then I'm backing it off to a little bit more of a finesse, moving a little bit less. Honestly, if you're looking for an aggressive presentation, you're wanting to catch those bigger fish and you're just not really wanting to catch the smaller fish, you're using that aggressive presentation. You're fishing at those peak hours where you really are targeting those aggressive fish. You're just looking for that reaction. That's when you're using those aggressive presentations and you're actually upsizing. And you'll be surprised that using that aggressive presentation gets you those bigger fish and gets you that reaction. And you can tell on your flasher and your finder which fish is the one that's going to bite and which ones are going to be reacting. And you can tell when they're not very reactive and when they're just not really interested in what you have to offer. And that's when you have to downsize. That's when you have to get them in with finesse versus having them just react to what you're placing in front of their face. So kind of, you got to kind of see what the fish want and kind of adjust as needed. Jig colors, we were just kind of talking about that. Look at the water clarity. Is there snow on the ice? Is there no snow on the ice? Is there light coming through? Some basics. If it's sunny, silver and gold, is there a shine? Some fish can see UV, and I'll go over UV and glow here in a second. Is the water cloudy? Is it stained? Some lakes are, better for other colors. I think another interesting thing, and I like these slides because what do we see versus what do the fish see? These are obviously open water lures, and it'll look different under the ice. But what does a jig look like when we look down on it versus the fish is looking up at it, right? So the sun is above from the fish versus we're looking down at it. So it's not the same. So you can see in cloudy water, a white lure is pretty bright. So that's why I like white. Because, when you're fishing in depth, it's going to be a little bit more obvious to the fish versus you look at the lures, on the right, in the right picture, when you're down in deeper water, those colors don't look the same. So you have to keep in consideration the depth that you're fishing in and kind of the cloudiness of the water. These are obviously taken in seawater, so the water's clear. You can never go wrong with the pinks and the whites and the chartreuses, as we were mentioning. Always when you're fishing in a group, split the colors up. Put pink on someone's rod, put chartreuse on someone's rod, get somebody with Wonder Bread, do Wonder Bread chartreuse on somebody else. See what's catching fish and then change. The key to fishing is being flexible. Figure out what's working and then just retie. All you got to do is just retie. It seems impossible to retie and you just want to be stubborn and not retie. Trust me, I never, when Jeremy is out fishing me, I will not, I swear to God, I am not going to take that damn lure off my line. And then I watch him catch 5 more crappies and I'm like, I'm doing it. And then I switch. And then by golly, that chartreuse pinhead pro worked. And it just is the most frustrating thing ever, but it's true. And that's why you do it. That's why you fish in big groups of women and you support each other. And then whoever has all the chartreuse pinheads has to then give them to everybody. And that's how we roll because we're the family and we support each other. Now, I might not give it to Jeremy though. Don't tell him that. Actually, I totally would. He gives me so many pinheads. So UV versus glow. This is kind of important, and I actually did not know this because I just thought that, fish were the same as us. Nope. Fish can see UV. The predator fish, they actually see UV light. So when you have like a UV bait, the predator fish can see that. Versus like we can't see UV, like we don't see in UV, but they can. So having a bait that has UV could up your potential predator, ability for a predator fish to see a UV bait. Versus glow needs to be charged. So you have to physically have like the glow ring in order to charge it, which would be nice at night. So you might notice that at nighttime, you're not getting a lot of bites. You charge your glow bait down, you drop it down, boom, you get a bite. Now a UV glow, it's kind of both. So you might need to charge. There was a question that said pinhead by itself or putting bait on it. So I typically fish the pinhead naked, which is by itself. But I will, and I have been known to put a spike or two on it when they are picky. And if I'm sun fishing, I will put a spike on it. For some reason, sunfish really like spikes on the pinhead. But what happens when you put the spike on a pinhead is that there's a little baby buffalo blade on it. And the buffalo blade can't hit the metal if you put a spike so the metal doesn't touch. And so it changes the cadence and it changes how it flows in the water. So I do think it changes that. You can make it so that the spikes don't affect the noise that it's going to make. But I think that noise is important sometimes. Bait is actually on one of the coming up slides. These are the 2 knots that every fisher person should know. They're the 2 easy ones. They work for monofilament and braid, the improved clinch, and the polymer. I'm not going to obviously go through them in depth, but I recommend everybody learn how to do a modification of at least the clinch knot. And then the polymer is like super simple. It works for both braid and monofilament, but I really only use it on braid. Clinch I use on both, but works best on monofilament. It's pretty much what I use on all of monofilament. So learn how to do those 2 knots. I didn't do any knot to knot or line to line knots on this talk. Next, we're going to go over baits. So now I'm going to talk about baits. So what do we do about bait? Plastics versus live bait. Honestly, they're equally successful. You just got to learn how to use them both. Really depends on what fish want. They work all year long. Both are the same. The thing about plastics are they look like what's in the water. You can just look at the picture. You can literally make a plastic look like anything, and it does match the hatch, which that's that word, that phrase that you're all going to hear. You want to match that hatch. So figure out what the fish are eating, and then you can pick which plastic you're going to use. You'll see this is that match the hatch. When we say match the hatch, what's in the lake that you're fishing? So what are you trying to mimic? Are there bloodworms? Are you in North Dakota where there are shrimp all over? Because you want to look like shrimp. If you are fishing in a lake with shrimp, you want your bait to look like shrimp. If you're fishing in a lake that has a bunch of minnows, you want to look like a minnow. If you got a bunch of bloodworms, you want to look like a bloodworm. So the best way to look like a bloodworm without being a bloodworm is to be a plastic that looks like a bloodworm. So a plastic would be a good option. So a little bit about live bait. What is a spike? A spike is a Eurolarva, which is a maggot. It's just been dyed. So that's all a Eurolarva is. They took maggots, they put some food coloring in them and made them pretty. And then they gave them the name Eurolarva. That's it. They just made them pretty and gave them a fancy name and charged you more money for them. So a Eurolarva is a maggot of a pretty name. They have a lot of scent, a lot of movement. They're what most people use. You want to hook them between the eyes where their scent sac is. That is different than a waxworm. A waxworm is not a maggot. It is a moth larva, and they're kind of squishy and they're long. You can hook them in the middle, you can hook them along the hook, or you can hook them wacky where they go along the kind of like in the middle like this. So kind of like this, maybe. So they're different. They're a wax moth. The Euro larvae and wax worms, you want to keep them warm and keep them in your pocket in the bait puck so that they stay alive because you want them to move. The motion is helpful. And you do want to change them every once in a while. Melissa, do you have any bait preference for the ice?
I liked the couple slides back, those little kind of mayfly or shrimpy looking things. That's what I've been using. I have really good luck. I think plastics have come a long way. There's scented ones, but just a lot of different shapes and wiggly things that really mimic the, a lot of our bugs that are hatching in the summer are in their larval stages in the water, and they're down in the plants, they're down in the muck. And that's what a lot of fish are feeding on throughout the winter months. So I like to try to kind of mimic some of those types of things.
If anybody knows those things, Melissa knows those things. She knows what the larvae look like.
Yeah. Under a microscope even.
Indeed. This is why I asked. Because I don't know what they look like. I only guess that they look like the little shrimpy things. So
yeah, that's what they look like. So I don't know. I have good luck with those. And then I do a lot of like winter trout fishing through the ice, and trout, like you said, match the hatch. When you're fly fishing in the summer, everybody's trying to figure out what bugs are hatching, and that's what they're using. So I try to do the same thing with some of those plastics.
I love it. One thing, and I have a slide kind of a little bit further down with some pictures of plastics, because there's a specific plastic called the whammy that is really, really long, and you can actually kind of take pieces of it and make it look into a whole bunch of different things. It's kind of neat. Something about live bait minnows, they're kind of versatile. You could hook them in a bunch of different ways. This is just a photo that shows kind of the different ways you can hook it. And you can also just use the head. One thing about just using the head is I like to take the heads off and stick them in my bait puck so that I can just keep them around if I'm going to say use it like on a jigging wrap. So that's one little tip. Another thing, so this is about the plastics. They can be modified, that's what I like. And they last for so long. You can use the same plastic all day long and catch fish. Al, at the Ice Fishing 101, I'm going to give away some whammies to some of the people who are participating, and you can kind of see that the whammy can be cut into little pieces. You can use the whole whammy to get a lot of action. You can cut it smaller if you don't need quite as much. And so that's why I really like the plastics, because they really do mimic exactly what they look like. They're called whammies because of we helped create them. That's what they're called, whammies. Whammy. It's a Mackie plastic. So another thing that I like to use is a silky. And this is a Dave Gens thing that he kind of introduced me to them. They're not super popular, and I'm not sure if Clam has them anymore. And I have a stockpile of them. And it's just a little piece of silk on a bead, and it floats in the water, and it kind of mimics the motion, and it just adds a little motion to the bait. It also holds scent. So I'll put a little maggot beside it, and it holds the scent of the maggot. I have them in all colors. You put the bead on the hook, and you don't ever have to change it. You can trim the silk. They're wonderful. Like I said, I use them all the time. Attached to this video is how Dave hooks them on. And I'll upload this video this talk to the website so that you can click on that video. Again, I really like the silkies, and I really like that you don't have to take them off and you can keep reusing it. And it does hold that scent. And you can also use like a scented product on the silky too. Jigging cadence. The cadence is the rhythm that you're using in the water. A finesse would be a more slower, a slower presentation for panfish. You can use slow for bigger fish too. Something you might pound on the bottom would be more for like a perch or a walleye, because that's how they feed. So the way that you're using the jig is the way that you're thinking how the fish is going to eat. The walleye traps, is more likely to trap the bait on the bottom, which is more like how you're going to want to pound the bottom. So that's how you're thinking about how your jig is going to work. When I say quivering motion, that's when I call it jig love. Give the jig love, give a little jig love. That's when you kind of quiver and you go slow. Sometimes you need to do a little stop and pause to get the fish kind of interested. And sometimes you just have to figure out what that keep away is to kind of get the fish interested. I'm always raising the bait to get the fish interested so that it comes up and then it takes it. Sometimes you'll pause and then you raise and then it takes it. So you just need to figure out what cadence it is that the fish wants. And sometimes they want you to keep moving, keep moving, keep moving, keep moving, and don't stop. Sometimes they want you to stop, and you just got to figure out what it is that fish wants. Most important thing you need is to stay organized on the ice. A bajillion ways of doing it. Some basics for plastics. There's wallets, portfolios. The key is to keep them airtight so that they don't freeze and they don't get dry. A lot of them that have scents have a little bit of oil on them too. So again, lots of different ways of doing it. I actually just shove them all inside my little plastic holder. And so I've got like 10 plastics stuck in a little container. So I'm not the most organized, not the right person to go for organization. For how to store bait and lures, I actually have the bottom left in my pocket at all times that I keep, and I've got all kinds of different jigs in there. And then I put my plastics in the little compartments on the left. And then I have a bait puck in the other one. The clam slimline jig boxes are fantastic, specifically for particularly the smaller tungsten jigs. They're good for the pinheads, but they're a little bit looser, so not quite as good because they can jiggle around. But finding which works the best for you is works best for you. There's a bajillion different ones. And I'm, obviously always up for different options for how people organize tackle, because everyone has creative ways. And I think that women are probably the best at coming up with creative ways of organizing tackle. And I think we have a lot to offer specifically for organization. So if you guys have great ideas, please post them on the site because I love it. Do you have any fancy ideas, Melissa, that you tackle organize?
No, but I just bought some of those slim ones that I've been loading for the last week. So I'm excited to try those because I tend to like wander and roam, and then I don't really want to have to go back to find my tackle. So I like to just have everything with me. So, and I love I have the DSG suit, and it's just nice to have all the pockets so you can have like all your stuff on you.
I love pockets. I have so many. My pockets are jammed full of stuff. I love pockets. Yeah. So how to read a flasher. This is, I think, really important because everyone, has basic flasher. This is the FL8. So this is the basic of the basic. These are the lines. The basic lines. The top is at the very top of the flasher. Then next will be your lure. This is the fish. It says your next meal. And then there's the bottom. So those are the basic lines. This is getting into a little bit more depth or a little bit more detail. On the Vexilar FL8, there's two sides. There's a white side. So there's a bottom dial and a top dial. The top dial is the gain, and that you turn it up, and that's the signal strength. So that makes the signal strength higher or lower. So you turn it to the right, and that makes it higher, so it'll make the lines fatter. Turn it down, that makes the signal strength lower, that makes the lines skinnier. The next one is going to be your depth turning up and down. The left is the shallow, that's the white. The right is the deep, and that's the inner circle. And you can see on the Vexilar in the picture, you can see the yellow is the inner circle and the outer is the white circle. So those are the numbers that they correspond to. And the 1 is the multiplication factor. So 1 is the number. 1 would be the multiplication of 1. So if it's on 5 and it's 1, then it's 1. So it'll be like the 5. So if you have it on the white and it's 1, then if the line is at 5, then it'll be 5. If you have it clicked to the 2 and it's at 5, then it's a 10. Does that make sense? So it's a multiplication factor so that you can go at various depths. That's why it makes sense. So like deep is obviously, if it's deeper, then it would be deeper. It's not, a very, it's pretty easy flasher to use. It's not going to be a super complex. It doesn't have multiple colors. It's just green and red and a little bit of yellow. There's interference. So you can push the button for interference to click for interference. That's pretty much the basics of the 8. It doesn't have a lot of extras like shallow mode or anything like that. Next.
I also think if you just get confused, like drop a big jig down so you can see like where you're at. You know, if you're like, where's the bottom? Which one's the bottom? Like drop your weight
Yes.
down and like watch it go down. And then, okay, I'm on the bottom. And then you can kind of set your depth using
That
that.
is very helpful. If you can, it's always nice to have something that has a heavy jig or a depth finder with you to find the bottom. I mean, that's how we used to do it with before we had fancy depth finders. Is you just had a depth bomb that you dropped to the bottom, and then you figured out how deep it was, and you went from there. I love the next slides because it shows you what the colors actually mean, because it's kind of interesting to think. So everyone thinks that the fish are directly underneath them, but what you have is a cone, right? So the sonar is a cone shaped. The fish that is directly underneath you, either the one that's going to bite your jig, because that's what's directly under you, that's the red fish. The closer that it gets to directly underneath you is the redder that it's going to get. The further away it is, then it's more green. So the further away it's green, the closer it gets to you, it's red. So think of it that way. The fish aren't just lined up underneath you. Green is far away, red is closer. So the same thing when you look at the colors, red is harder, greener is softer when you're looking at bottom. So green would be like muddy bottom, red would be like hard sandy bottom. This is what we think the fish look like, all stacked up in a nice little line, but that's actually kind of what they look like more in that cone. And depending on what angle your transducer is, will depend on kind of how big that cone angle is. So it just kind of depends on what you're looking at. And you'll see there's a lot of different cone angles that you have in these transducers. The pretty bait, the one that we use most of the time is the 19. So you can see though that the diameter of coverage that you're looking at on the lake floor, it's hugely different, as you go down. So as you're getting deeper and deeper and deeper, you're looking at a much, much bigger surface area just because of physics and, math of fish. So when you're in deep water, that green fish, so you're in 30 feet of water, that green fish is 10 feet away from you, versus when you're in 5 feet of water, it's 2 feet away from you. So that's kind of a big difference between how far those fish are based on your transducer. So how do you pick a line, or how do you pick a rod or a reel? Let me click. Panfish, obviously these aren't big fish, these are little fish. You don't want to pick a giant heavy rod. You want to be able to see the bite. You want to have a lighter noodle type rod, or an ultralight rod, something maybe with a spring bobber that you can see that light bite with a light detection. You're going to be using it with a small jig or a small spoon. The ultralight and the light don't necessarily need a spring bobber. Some of them have the fancy tips. I personally really like the ones that have the special tips that have the color so that you can detect the bite. I'm more of a visual angler, so I like to be able to see the tip go down. I also like to be able to feel. So I'm more of the ultralight and light versus the ultralight spring bobber type fisher person. For predator or bigger fish, you're going to want to go into the heavier rods. This is something like more of open water feel, where you're going to be able to feel the bite. These are the mediums, the medium light action rods. These are the jigs and the spoons, the bigger spoons, the bigger rattle baits, and the rods that they can actually handle those heavier baits. So that would be the difference between, like, when you put the heavier bait on, the rod tip doesn't bend. If you put a heavy bait on a light rod, it's going to not be able to handle that load. So they're similar to open water, they're just much shorter, which we get to what length are you going to pick? So the length of the rod really depends on how are you fishing, what are you fishing for, and what is the style of fishing that you're doing. There is some personal preference involved. Some people really like shorter rods. Some people are fishing outside. Some people are fishing in a shack. If you're fishing in a shack with a short roof, you cannot fish with a 36-inch rod. Because you will hit the roof when you set the hook. If you're fishing outside for giant walleyes, you're going to want to have a big hook set, and you're going to want to have a long rod. Shorter rods are good for being close to the hole. They're good when it's really windy, when you're outside, you want to be very close to the hole. A lot of tournament anglers like these little short rods. I'm not a huge fan, but a lot of people like them. Big, longer rods are great for big hook sets. They're great to get that leverage on that big fish. You move a lot of line when you move a big rod. So maybe not the best for a small panfish where you don't want to do a big hook set. So maybe a little bit shorter rod when you're doing a panfish rod. So always be really thoughtful when you buy your rods. And then as you fish a little bit longer, then you can kind of tailor that rod to kind of what you're looking for and kind of how you fish. So what do I use? Just so that you can get a little bit of an understanding. I have tuned up custom rods for the most part. I love the quick tip rods. They don't make them anymore. They're sort of a medium light type rod. Pinhead 30-inch is my favorite go-to, 28 and 30-inch. My favorite, though, is my 32. My 30 and 32-inch bullet, that's pretty much what I use. That's a noodle tip with a stiff back rod. I use it to catch all of my crappies. That is my go-to. If the fish are being super finicky, I will whip out my noodle rod with my small tungsten jigs. That's when it's really, really light bite. I am not the best. I will be super honest with you on that. Because you got to watch the bite, and I'm not quite as good at that. For the big walleyes, I use my Commander. So when I'm on Winnipeg, I use my Commander, which is a long, medium heavy rod. Precision rod, which is a little bit heavier, more like a medium 30-inch. New rods from Clam that I really like. I love the Katana Noodle and the Scepter Carbon 28 Ultralight and Light. Those are two very good affordable rods, or 3 rods from Clam that are competing nicely with my tuned up custom rods. Melissa, which rods do you use for ice fishing?
I kind of had a lot of mixed bag of stuff that we had. But last year I treated myself to the Katana Ultralight 28-inch, and I absolutely love it because I like the longer. I didn't have any longer ones, but I'm usually outside roaming around, so I just kind of like not being able to like sit right over the hole. And just the sensitivity was like perfect for kind of all different, sizes of fish, because it still has the like backbone to be able to catch some bigger ones. So it has just the nice sensitive tip on it. So yeah, that's my new favorite.
What reel do you have on that one?
I don't remember. I don't know if I bought a new one or not, but I did put brand new line on it, and that's when I caught my 4.5 pound rainbow. That was 22 inches last year, and I'm pretty sure I wouldn't have landed it if I didn't have brand new line on it, because it put up quite the fight. So
awesome. I love the Katana is a great rod, and the Ultralight was my favorite, but we used it as a guide rod and it got broken. So I no longer have it. Sad face.
Nope.
So we were perfect setup. We're going to talk about line next. So line, what kind of line to pick? Lots of different kinds of line. Monofilament is a great go-to. It's the basic because it works. There's a reason it works. Works for most knots. It's got low visibility. It does have some floating ability. It floats more than fluorocarbon. It's inexpensive, cost effective. It does absorb light and has a lot of memory, so it does need to be changed. I change it, probably every year. It deteriorates from UV light. Fluorocarbon is expensive. It sinks, which has some functionality if you're fishing deep. It has a little bit less stretch. There are some applications where you want stretch, and there's some applications where you don't want stretch. Sometimes that stretch is more forgiving, and you want the stretch in order to be able to catch that fish. It works for a little bit, for some of the knots. Sometimes that sinking quality isn't as effective. So again, pros and cons, all my rods have monofilament because it's cost effective and it's just what we use. I use high vis monofilament because I'm old now and I can't see it. And when you use 3 pound test, you need all the help you can get to get that line through that tiny little jig head. And even with high vis, it's hard. So high vis, usually orange or yellow is my choice. I also use braid. Braid is great. Braid is no stretch. It has a lot of strength. It's very small. It has become much more useful on the ice. It does not freeze nearly as much as it used to. It has not have memory like it did. It doesn't have a lot of memory. Some of it freezes a little more than others, but really not a significant amount like before. The knots that you can tie, usually you'll use the polymer or the uni. Again, it's got high visibility though in the water, so people will sometimes tie a leader to it. So it can freeze outside when it's wet. If you're doing deep water fishing, it's really nice to use braid. If you're fishing outside and your line is getting stuck to the side of the hole, it's nice to have braid because, you can just pull that braid right off the hole and it's not going to break. If you have 3-pound mono on your ice hole and you pull it, sometimes it breaks. There's a question, the hot water trick when putting new line on. I don't know what does this mean? I don't know what the hot water trick is when putting the new line on. I'm not sure what the question. It's a question, and I'm not sure what the question is. I don't know if that's to try to get the memory out, if that's what they're trying to get at. But I'm assuming that they're talking about the memory, because sometimes you can get the line hot. If you warm the line up, it will affect the memory. That would be my guess, but I'm not 100% sure. But I don't typically get the line hot when I put on it, but maybe that person will comment on what they meant by that. Reel selection. So I am now in love with the inline reels. I wasn't initially in love with them, but I am kind of in love with them now. The spinning reels are classic, easy to use, price, point, lots of different ones. Fluger-Trion is what I have on the majority of my rods, but I do also have a lot of the clam ones too. The Kajik, I think is how you say it, and the Katana and the Tatsumi, very price friendly. We get an awesome discount, so even more price friendly. But I really do love the inline reels. They have less memory. I like the Elite and not the Gravity Elite because that little button is just, I can't do it. I pull my line out and it works shockingly well. Once you learn how to use an inline reel, it just becomes second nature. And the amount of spooling that you get goes down. The amount of memory that you have is very low. And the ability to get that line down really, really fast is pretty amazing. So again, once you really learn how to use an inline, they are quite nice. If people want to see them or use them on Saturday, I will have my inlines there. So do you use inlines or spinnings?
I have both. Not really particular one either. I mean, I'd say mostly spinning, but I have a couple inline. I like that you don't get the twisties in your line. So like if I'm fishing deeper water, I like that one more, but
it was hard for me to get used to, but now that I have it, it's my favorite. And to be honest,
yeah,
the
it's
reason
like fly line or whatever, like a fly fishing rod kind of. So
yes. So I don't fly fish, so I'd never used one before. I bought it because of the color. That was literally why I bought it. It was because it was cute. I'm not going to even lie. I bought it because it was cute. And then I used it and I'm like, oh, this is actually just as amazing as everyone said. And so now I buy it because it's useful, not just because it's cute. So there you have it. Line selection, what pound test, panfish small, 2 to 4. I use 3 because it's easy, catches most fish, can even land big fish if your drag is set correctly. Again, the high vis because you can't see it otherwise. Walleye, a little bit bigger, obviously because they're bigger, and then pike. This is a common sense one. Using, go up for the bigger lines, up for the bigger fish, up for the bigger rod. So if you're going to be using a medium rod to fish for walleye, you're going to want to have a heavier line. We're getting towards the end. We're almost there, ladies. Tip ups. This is like my last 4 slides. I don't tip up fish very much. I am mostly a pan fisherwoman. So this is super basic when it comes to tip ups. Tip ups.
I love tip ups.
Okay. Oh, good. Maybe Melissa knows more about tip ups than me. So this is all I know about tip ups. They're unattended line, and they're like your second line, and they're for bigger fish, predator fish. And you use suckers or minnows. There's a flag attached to them. And then they've got this little spool at the bottom of it. And I have a picture of the usual tip up setup with the hooks. So that's what they typically look like. What more information can you give, Melissa?
Well, I guess like the reason I like tip ups, because oftentimes you're on a lake where there might be like panfish, but there's also big predator fish roaming around. And if you're just targeting the panfish and you're like, oh, some more reason there's no panfish around, could be because there's a giant northern like 30 feet over to your right and you don't know about it. And if you have like, I'll kind of set like tip ups out around my perimeter of where I might have my shack that I'm jigging. And then sometimes you'll catch the big giant northern that's coming lurking on your crappies or panfish that you're trying to catch. So I like it because when I'm out fishing, I just want to catch anything. So kind of gives you like an ability to fish with a big giant sucker minnow, plus maybe take home some crappies. But also you can do it as like a fun social thing where you're out on the lake and everybody drills holes and then you have tip ups and you can either like pick your tip up that this is mine and, you know, do a little competition of who catches the biggest or the most fish. Or I've done it where we, you know, have 10 or 20 of us and we drill all these holes and have these tip ups. And then it's like a foot race to like a flag goes up and whoever sees it, off they run and trying to catch, you know, a big northern or something. So I think they're fun, catch big fish. Don't really have to do anything. You just kind of like set them out. And if you don't catch anything, you could like move it, you know, with 2 lines that you can use. So me having kids, like you can get quite a few of them out there. You can kind of set them along like a depth profile. So have some in maybe shallower and then, you know, there's a drop off. You could set some on the drop off, some at different depths. So yeah, I don't know. I like them.
I think they sound wonderful. We just don't fish for them very often because we typically pan fish, just more of like with the way that I fish with my husband and his guide clients. I think with the running and fishing as a group, and you could definitely make it into a drinking game. I think tip up sound like a fun day on the ice.
Yeah, it is fun.
Sounds about as Minnesotan as it gets. And I like that. We are going to have a tip-up station at Ice Fishing 101 on Saturday where we are going to learn more about tip-up. So be prepared. There will be actual teaching about tip-up. So we are going to learn more. So I get asked this a lot. How do I go to the bathroom on the ice? And I'm the most prepared human being on the face of this planet. So I will always have a bucket with me. I'm a bucket peer because I can't just like... I'm not like a pee in the woods sort of girl. I will just pee on myself because I'm awkward and just I'm awkward. It is what it is. So it's illegal to dump your pee on the ice now. So we don't do that. But if you did, that would be one technique that you could do. You could dump it like on the grass or whatever, like on shoreline. But if you didn't, you could pee into kitty litter. And that's actually what you do if you have number 2. That's what you do. Like if you're in a nice shack, it actually works shockingly well and contains the smell actually super well. I always have in my pocket, I have a little Ziploc that has portioned out clean toilet papers in clumps, like several of them. And then I have another Ziploc bag for used toilet paper so that in case I did need to go to the bathroom, that's my little toilet paper bag. And so then I use my bucket and then I used to, you know, dump the urine out of the bucket into the or onto the ice or back into the lake because urine is sterile technically. So that's how I would usually go to the bucket. There are devices like Shiwis and you just drop, trout, and squat or go into a shack or go to the land. I have 0 problems just like peeing in a bucket in the front of everybody. I feel like it's natural. But it's nice to have a wind block because it's cold. So that's my technique. So I just thought I would share them with all of you. But there are rules now about it. So we have to be a little bit more careful and we're not supposed to dump our urine out on the ice. And being respectful, Melissa. So those are the rules. We can't pee on the ice. So That's my basic Ice 101 talk, ladies. If you guys have questions, the event that we have is this Saturday. It is full. It is on Lake Osakis. On Sunday, we are going to be going on a just outing for women anglers in Minnesota on Lake Osakis. So we will be out on the lake fishing. The crappie fishing's been pretty good. So I am pretty excited about that. If you guys want to come, you are obviously welcome. If that's open to family and friends, you can bring anyone that you want, but we will be out on the lake. There is a web page for that meet and greet. Again, I have some connections on the lake. My husband runs Lake Osakis Guide Service, so we have had him out there this week finding some spots for us to go crappie fishing. So I think it's going to be a really good fishing experience. As far as Ice Fishing 101 goes on Saturday, if you guys are coming, we are actually going to be going out of the hill launch, and I will send an update versus head of the lakes. Just it gets a little closer to a spot where there are fish for us to catch at the event. Like I said, the crappies are biting on Osakis, and I want everyone to be able to catch some fish and learn a whole bunch about fishing. So I am really, really excited. Hopefully you learned something about ice fishing today. And if you have questions, please feel free to send me an email at vp@womenanglersminnesota.com, or I'm sure you could send Melissa an email also. I think, what is yours? education@womenanglersmn.com.
Correct. Yep.
Perfect. I guess if you don't have anything else, then we are done. Anything to add?
No, I think you did a great job. You covered a lot of stuff. You kind of mentioned, going and watching videos on stuff. I do that all the time. So we might have questions of like, you talked about like cadence, but what does it actually look like? Or how are people jigging? There's so much stuff out there right now that you can get out there and watch some videos and try to get some tips on how to actually do some of that stuff. So, but also this weekend you'll be learning in person.
Indeed.
Which I'm really sad I can't be there, but
I know it happens. Next year. That's right. My station this year is actually jigging and cadence. So at my station, you will get to see the jigging, cadence, and the kind of lures. So I will go over that. I'm going to use my live scope and my fish finder and go over different rods, different lures, and kind of show you what they look like under the water. So pretty excited about it.
Yeah, I'm excited. Ladies are going to learn a lot. So
yes. So hopefully y'all learned a little bit about ice fishing with this talk, and we're really excited. So if you're new to WHAM, hopefully you learned a little bit and got to see us. Thank you so much, Melissa, for your help today. We're so excited for you joining the education, and we will get out. Can't wait for you to fish on Osakis. So
I'm excited.
Excellent.
Yeah, thanks, ladies. Thanks for joining us.
Bye. Have a good night.
Bye.